Hey everybody, my name is Paul Arthur. Welcome to WizeUp. Going to talk some politics today, everything from the threat of U.S. tariffs to immigration, affordability, of course. And today's guest has a lot of things to say on these issues, and he's not shy. He's pretty outspoken. Maxime Bernier, leader of the PPC, People's Party of Canada, their website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. So good to have you with us, Maxime.
Thank you, Paul. I'm very pleased to be with you.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say for sure. I'm guessing you're probably pretty busy now, traveling the country, getting ready for the upcoming election, getting your candidates ready, that sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely. We have a lot of candidates right now, but we still need a couple of other candidates in some ridings across the country. So I'm traveling, and we want the party to be ready for the second week of March. That the election may be called at that time
Wow.
if Mark Carney is elected, and I think he will be. So we have strong ideas. We will have strong candidates and ready for this campaign.
Okay. Well, let's dive right into some of the stuff that everybody's talking about over the last number of weeks, and that's the threat of U.S. tariffs, of course. I mean, very interesting. You don't believe the same way most of the other federal liberal leaders do, or leaders do, period. You don't think that retaliation is the best approach. So how do you see it? How would you respond?
Yes, you're right about that. I'm the only leader, and we are the only political party who's against regulation and imposing tariffs dollar for dollar, like Poliev said, and Carney and Freeland and Stephen Harper also last weekend wrote a letter about that. It's crazy to do that. We won't win a trade war with the US. They are 10 times bigger than us. It's impossible to win. And, they're telling us that they love our country and they love Canada. And Canada is not the 51st state. And so they love us so much that they're ready to tax us more because imposing tariffs, it will be a tax on Canadians. Now, Trump said that he may impose 25% tariffs starting as early as in March. But I don't believe he will impose that. He said that the preoccupations that he had was our borders, the security at our borders, the fight against drug traffickers, fentanyl, and and he wants us to do something there. And Trudeau, and he gave a month to Trudeau to do it. So, and Trudeau decided to reinvest in our own security. I think that's a great idea. And I don't think that Trump will impose tariffs because we are acting now. It's a little bit late, but we are acting. So, but also, as you may know, Paul, Trump wants to impose another 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum uh, in March. But it will impose that on every country, not only us or Mexico, but every country. What that means that our steel and aluminum going to the US will be competitive because the price for every other producers of steel and aluminum, their price will go up by 25%. So we will still be competitive in the US market. And what Trump is doing, it is taxing Americans and American businesses. So our leaders want us to be taxed more with that retaliation tariffs dollar for dollar. What Trump said, he said, and also his Secretary of State said it a couple of days ago, that for them, they want to reopen the free trade agreement that we have with US and Mexico. It's supposed to be reopened in 2026, but they want the negotiation, the reopening of that free trade agreement right now. So that's the solution. When you did ask what is our position, to go and say to Trump, okay, we are ready to reopen the free trade agreement right now, and everything will be on the table. Let's have a negotiation. But what these establishment leaders want is to have a trade war and to impose and tax more Canadians. So it won't work. It will hurt everybody. And actually, I must say that Harper said we must do that. And if we do that, we may be in a recession, and that's okay. That would be the price to pay to be independent. But Harper is saying to Canadians, I will impose a retaliation tariffs. You will pay for that, you Canadians that I love so much. And because of that, we will be in a recession. I agree with him on one point. Yes, if the Canadian government is doing that, we will be in a recession. So
Okay.
the only thing to do is to stop all that, going at the table, having a new deal with Trump, and all that won't happen.
Well, that's very
So
interesting. I mean, I think you take a political risk, of course, by saying you're not going to retaliate, because I think every Canadian leader federally wants to look strong, standing up to Trump. But you have a very good point in the sense that they're 10 times bigger. So you're right. I mean, we can't win a trade war, and it will affect both countries. And I do wonder if Trump is just doing this as a negotiation tool, and perhaps he won't ever actually, put the tariffs into place. Maybe he'll just extend it a little while and keep negotiating back and forth. That's possible. But now you're saying your position is to reopen the NAFTA negotiations and so forth. And very interesting. You talk about putting things on the table that every federal leader is scared to do, and that is, let's say supply management, for example, and put that on the table. Well, that's almost like saying goodbye, Quebec, right? I mean, everybody wants votes in Quebec, but you're willing to risk that?
absolutely. And that will be for the good of Canadians. As you know, because of that cartel, supply management in dairy, poultry, and eggs, we are paying twice the price if you compare that with the prices in the US. So we need to abolish that. We need to have a transition period for these producers, and these producers must be able to export in other countries. Now they are not able to export because of that cartel. So yeah, we must put it on the table. And actually, you're right. I said that 10 years ago. That would be good for Canadians. That would be good for the US. But actually, Trump said it. And he did tweet about that what he doesn't like about our free trade agreement, it's the cartel in dairy, poultry, and eggs. That must be on the table. We can have a deal with him. And so that would be important to have a deal with him for the Canadian economy and for the benefit of the whole Canadian economy. We need to put that on the table. And also, Trump said the auto pack, the automobile industry in Ontario. Put all that on the table, and we'll be able to have a good deal for the US and for us. But you're absolutely right. These establishment leaders, Polyev and Carney, they are telling our dairy producers, we won't put that on the table. We will protect you. By doing that, they're not helping other industries and our economy in Canada, and they're not helping Canadian consumers. So that's the only thing that we must do if we want to have a deal, and that would be good for us, like I said before.
Well, what about what's the feedback from Quebec? Quebecers, what are they saying to you when you travel, when you speak, you do interviews like this? What kind of feedback are they giving you? Are they going to give you any support on that? Because that's a pretty precious thing in Quebec, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Actually, I did announce last week that I will run at the next general election in my former riding in Beauce. Beauce is about an hour by car south of Quebec City. And that's a rural riding, half rural, half urban. And there's a lot of dairy producers over there. And when I did my press conference, and I said to the dairy producers, let's work together. I will be honest with you. We need to put the cartel on the table to be able to have a good deal, and I will be there with you to start having a discussion about a just compensation that the federal government must give you to abolish the quotas and the cartel. And I can tell you, some dairy producers came to me after my press conference and said, Maxime, you are right. Time is running, and that would be good for the economy in Quebec and in Canada, to put that on the table to be able to have a deal. So they're ready, and now they want to have a discussion about what will be their compensation for the abolition of that cartel. And I told them, all these other politicians, when they are saying that they will protect you, they're lying to you, because they can't protect you. Because if we want a deal, we will need to put that on the table, not only that cartel, but also the automobile industry. So it's coming, and they understand for their benefit that we must abolish that cartel, and they will be able to export their products in other countries also.
Okay, well, this will be very interesting to see how this turns out come March. Okay, let me ask you about Canadian values. The Prime Minister, of course, has said some pretty interesting things on Canadian values. He said Canada is a post-national state. We have no core identity, according to Trudeau. So, how do you see Canada? What are our core values? What is our identity?
Yes, we have an identity as Canadians. This country is very different than other countries on this planet. We believe in the rule of law. We believe that men and women are equal before the law. We have not only one culture, but maybe more than one culture. The culture in Quebec, the Francophone in Quebec, is very different than the culture in Alberta. The culture in PI, it's different than the culture in BC. So that's Canada. That's unique, and we must preserve that. Now we are not with mass immigration and the policy of multiculturalism. Too many people are coming to this country. They don't integrate into our society. They are keeping their values and their culture of their country of origin, and they are not integrating our country. So yes, we are different. We have two official languages, English and French, and we need to teach to these immigrants and Canadians about our culture, our identity, our history, and we are not doing that.
Okay, I agree, and especially when you talk about our history, Canada has an amazing history, frankly, and you look at Canada's position in the world for so many years. And that's been declining recently, I think, so much because we kind of hate ourselves when we look back and we say, oh, Canada, we're comparing our leaders from yesterday, from 100 years ago, and we're comparing them to today's standards. That's not the right way to do it, because we had different culture, different standards, a century ago than we do today. So it's not really a fair comparison. So I think we need to stop toppling statues and changing the names of our schools and so forth. And from what I can see, it looks like you'd be in agreement on that. Let me ask you a little bit about immigration. You touched on it there. It's a super touchy issue, but I see that the trends are changing in Canada, and we're less inviting, I think, right now for immigration. I mean, we've always loved immigrants, but for example, your party is talking about putting a moratorium on immigration and even deporting illegal immigrants, and kind of, revamping the process of, how we, I guess when people come here, we need to be a little more picky to make sure that their values line up with our values in Canada, right?
Absolutely. Yes, you're right. And what we want to do with that moratorium, it would be important to have that pause on immigration for a couple of years until, we are able to solve the problems that are there because of mass immigration. We have a housing problem in our country. It's very difficult to buy a house for younger generation. Housing is very expensive in big cities across the country. And that's the economy 101, supply and demand. When you have more people coming to our country, they need to have a roof, and that is putting pressure on prices for a house. So let's stop mass immigration. That will help the housing crisis, but also we need to have that pause because of the fact that these immigrants that are coming to Canada right now, a lot of them are not speaking English or French. It's very difficult for them to integrate into our society, to be part in our society. They're living in ghettos across the country. We don't want that. We want people who will be able to participate in our society, to be able to have a job. But right now, the economy is very tough for everybody. We may be in a recession in a couple of months, and we need to put Canadian first. And that's why we want to have that moratorium. And when we will reopen our doors to immigration, yes, we will need to take Canadians, not Canadians, immigrants, sorry, who will share our values, and we will need to have a face-to-face interview with them.
Wow, I like what now that's really interesting what you just said there, because my understanding is that hardly ever happens now. It's just filling out the forms, check off the boxes. So how do we know who's coming to our country unless we do some face-to-face interviews? That makes sense.
Yeah, and we don't do that anymore. And actually, what you said about deportation, there's between 25,000 to 500,000 of illegals in our country right now. And this year, the number will grow around 4.9 million people. What is an illegal? An illegal is a person who came here under a permit, for example, international students, and after when their permit expired, when they have their diploma, like usual, they must go back to their country of origin. But they're not doing that anymore. We have fake international students coming from India, and they want to stay here after their diploma. And they're illegals when they're doing that. They must be deported. Same thing with the temporary foreign workers. After their permit, when the permit expired, they must go back to their country. A lot of them are not. So we must put our resources that we have at Citizenship and Immigration Canada Department to find these people. We need to know the exact number. We need to find them, and we need to deport them. So that's the only thing. If you want to be serious, if you have immigration laws, you must be sure that people will be following the law and not cheating. And now they're cheating. But the worst about all that is the conservatives and the liberals are ready to give permanent residency to fake international students who are cheating and are staying to Canada when they don't have any permit. So that's telling them, you don't respect our legislation, but that's okay. We'll give you a nice gift, the gift of the permanent residency. So now that will be the back door for immigrants or foreigners to come to our country, and after that try to stay here to have the permanent residency.
Yeah, I
If
can
a
understand
foreigner,
I can
yeah,
understand the concerns there. That's a major job, though, to actually, deport that many, yeah, temporary foreign workers, students, whatever it is. That's a massive undertaking. So we'll see what happens with that. Very interesting. If we can just touch base on, you touched on it earlier, the affordability and housing issue. Now, it is, of course, tied in with immigration. That's a big part of it. So it's going to be a major election issue, of course. Any other changes aside from immigration that you'd like to see take place to make housing more affordable? It's just, you look at young people and how do they possibly enter the housing market? So what can be done?
yeah, actually, it's very difficult for a young couple to have a house, buying a house in a big cities. The costs are very high. So what we must do, yeah, immigration will be a good part. Less demand that will help, like I said. So that moratorium will help. What we can do also is fighting inflation. Fighting inflation, we can do that by first balancing the budget in 1 year. And because if you balance the budget, you won't have to borrow money, because we must know it. The money that you borrow, the money that you spend, money that you don't have today, and you are borrowing that money, that will be the taxes of the future, or the future inflation. So we need to stop that, balancing the budget. And at the same time, we need to have a new agreement with the Bank of Canada on a 0% inflation target. Right now, the Bank of Canada is creating inflation, 2% inflation every year. So we have inflation because of the Bank of Canada in the housing market, but also everywhere in our country. If you do your grocery, you're going to see that the inflation is not 2%, like politicians are telling us. The official inflation, they said it is 2%, but the real inflation, it must be around 5-6%. So the way to fight inflation is to tell the Bank of Canada, you won't be able to create money out of thin air. You will have to have a zero inflation target. If we have that, everybody will keep their purchasing power. Actually, their purchasing power will go up. We will be able to buy more goods and services with the same dollar when you don't have inflation. When you have deflation, it's good because you can buy more goods and services with the same dollar. So let's fix that, and that will help everybody.
So are you saying you'd introduce legislation to actually tell the Bank of Canada that you can't actually print money and you've got to aim for the 0% in inflation?
Yeah, we don't need to pass a legislation. In the Bank of Canada legislation right now, the federal government, every 5 years, the federal government is able to have a negotiation and a new inflation target with the bank.
Okay.
So we will be able to have a new agreement with the Bank of Canada without, reopening the legislation or tabling a new legislation. You will have a new deal, and what we will say to the Bank of Canada, now the new inflation target must be 2%. That will be the new target for the five more years.
Okay.
And at every 5 years, we will be able to have a new agreement with the bank.
Okay, that'd be very interesting to see if something like that could happen. Okay, let me ask you a bit about, I guess it's a bit of an elephant in the room. I mean, so the PPC, I think you got something like 5% of the vote overall last election. And you have been, incrementally going higher and higher, which, for you would be very exciting in that sense. But I think I'm also hearing people say, well, if a vote for the PPC is going to split the conservative vote overall and potentially allow a liberal victory, is that a good thing? Or possibly a minority instead of a majority, conservative government? I mean, I don't think you believe that you're going to form the next government. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, are you going to... If there's a close riding somewhere in Ontario where the Conservatives, could lose to the Liberals, by just a little bit, and if your candidate didn't run there, that would allow them to win. Do you have any kind of a plan that way?
Yeah. The answer to that is the People's Party of Canada is not splitting any vote. That's the Conservative Party of Canada that is splitting the Liberal votes. That's what Poilievre is doing. Look at the survey right now. The Liberals and the Conservative are very close. They are splitting the vote in between these two political parties. To split something, that means that you'll have, two pieces of the same object. So if you split an apple, you'll have two pieces of that apple. But we are so different than the Conservative Party of Canada. Our people, are coming from, a lot of them are people who never voted. As you know, there's 40% of the population who didn't vote at the last general election. Our goal is to have the support of these people, and they're coming to our party. So yes, we are different. We just had the discussion about immigration. Poilievre is okay to have 250,000 new immigrants every year. That's mass immigration. We must stop that. On climate change, Polyev is okay with the Liberal to have targets to achieve the Paris Accord targets.
And
So
you're saying you want to be withdraw from the Paris Accord,
yeah,
correct?
we
Okay.
want to withdraw from the Paris Accord. Polyev won't impose a carbon tax, but it will impose more regulations and maybe another tax to achieve these targets. For us, there's no climate emergency, so we will withdraw from that. And another point, Polyev and the Liberals on the equalization formula. They don't want to change the formula to be radically less generous and to be fair for every province. That's part of our platform. But
Okay.
Polyev and the Liberal, they want to give more money to eastern provinces like Quebec to buy votes with that. We won't do that. So what I'm saying to Western Canadians, the Conservatives are taking your vote for granted. They won't do the bold reforms that need to be done in our country. So we
Okay.
don't split any vote. We are so different. And that's the goal of
Okay.
Polyev, to split the Liberal vote.
Okay, well, let me ask you, when do you think the election will be? It sounds like you're thinking it's going to be early, probably. Do you think the People's Party of Canada will be able to win a seat somewhere this time around?
As you know, our goal is to increase our percentage of the vote. We are a young political party, a new populist party in Canada. We created that party 6 years ago. That being said, because of our electoral system, there's no proportionality in our electoral system. It is the first past the post. So we had 5% of the vote at the last election, but we don't have 5% of the members of parliament. It would be great if we can have some proportionality in our electoral system, but because of that, it's a little bit harder for us to have somebody elected. If you compare what is happening in Europe, where they have proportionality in their
Right.
electoral system, there's a populist party who are growing very fast over there. We are
Okay.
growing, so our goal is to double our votes.
Double
And
it. Okay. So
from
10%.
from
10% is the goal.
10,
Okay.
yeah,
I have to
from
I
5
have to leave
10.
it there because my clock is running. But thank you
Okay.
so much for your time, Maxime. Good luck to you. All right, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out for you guys this time around. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate that. Tell your friends about us. WizeUp.ca.